Alrighty, guys. Chapter 14 talks about risk management, which means that we need to consider of the employee and the organization as a whole, the financial and the physical human factors to protect for the employee and the employer. We're looking at health problems or accidents at work, uh, terrorism attacks that are there, uh, protecting against workplace violence, ensuring that your HR data is secure so that it's not going to get hacked, like your social security number. And then, of course, looking at diseases and outbreaks, and then preparing for natural disasters. These are some of the main ones that we need to deal with. So when we're looking at security, safety, and health, of course, we're talking about at the organization. Remember, we provide health insurance, and we talked about that in benefits. But we're talking about making sure that people are feeling safe when they come to work, that they feel secure, that there is a safety uh, type of situations that are intact, that there's a procedure intact, and it's in the employee handbook as well on what they need to do. So they take taking care of their physical and their emotional and mental health. So we do have some safety and health regulations, workman's compensation that we talked about in chapter 13. We've talked about Americans with Disabilities, talked about child labor laws, non-discrimination provisions, and collective bargaining laws as well. We've talked about all of those. What we haven't talked about, though, are the, and of course, we talked about the um, benefits and compensation and retraining if it's needed, and survivor benefits if families are killed on the job. What we need to talk about, though, are the issues related to work assignments. The employer needs to make sure that they maintain the safest working methods, that they comply with safety laws, they comply with OSHA, which we'll talk about. And we need to make sure that we inform the employees about any kind of risks and document the employee acceptance of risk, meaning that they've been trained and that we're um, ensuring that they've been trained by us documenting it and them documenting it as well. um, International assignments must consider protection from assault, theft, disasters, disease, poor health care, um, tax and immigration risks, dangerous working conditions, because we know what we've got here in the United States. We're not sure about a different company base in a different country. So we have to be careful with that as well. OSHA is the Occupational Safety and Health Act. It was brought about to ensure safety and that the workers are protected, that the employers, if they're the ones that are negligent, are doing everything that they need to do to make sure that there is a safe um, place for their employees, in that it is a safe place for their employees at the organization. So of this, we need to consider then, what do we do? We need to make sure that we take care of those things that we need to. And then, of course, have inspections. And we need to inspect ourselves to make sure that there's no wires hanging, that there's no bare wires hanging, that if there's uh, water on the floor, that there's a sign there. Some of the most, how would I say, uh, common mistakes are not the big ones, but the small ones, where either a customer or employee is hurt because of that. The fact that there's no sign saying there's a sidewalk dip, or you need to go around the breakage in the sidewalk, or there's a wet floor. Those are some of the ones that I can come up with right now. That are some of the ones that are out there. The things that you would think that people would know that would take care of, but they don't. So we have to make sure that we're going to have the enforcement standards, that it needs to be communicated. If you're in a health situation, also bloodborne pathogens, meaning that you're working in a health institution, um, you have to have your protective equipment where needed. And of course, you need to make sure about pandemic guidelines as well. Should something happen, should there be somebody, say, in an airplane or in a hospital, or because of uh, tainted food, that there's guidelines as far as what we need to get done. And then, of course, the category of the injuries are, of course, the worst one is death. Uh, Injuries causing days away from work, illnesses that then end up having to be, um, the employee has to be transferred because of the restricted duty that they're going to have at a certain time, or whether they're going to be able to go back to the job that they had or the position that they had, and other kind of recordable cases as well. The biggest thing is the direct costs. Okay, we know how much that is, but this is an iceberg where the indirect costs and the immeasurable costs are the bigger issues, where you're looking at decreased loss of productivity, claims on administration, time and production lost by coworkers, time lost by the supervisor, cost to replace the injured workers, the negative publicity and reputation with all of the things that are coming around, like the beef that was tainted currently, um, the negative influence on employees as well. Their morale, how they feel because they're not being protected, they're not being told. So those indirect and immeasurable costs also, especially where your brand is tainted, that nobody wants to go there because of fear of getting some kind of illness or disease, is immeasurable. It is huge. That's where you can lose a tons of money. So the organization has to be committed to safety policies and disciplines, and training and communication. Mental health is another one that we have to be very careful with. It's one thing to know that they're going to have to work a double shift, but a triple shift, and sometimes people can handle it. But again, too many in succession is not good. You need to be wary of that. There's signs that you have to think about, and of course the stress that are related to excessive demands and expectations. And right now, being that it's toward the or even when it's toward any kind of holiday, depending on the people, their needs, what their wants, it's the biggest reason why people, one, have health issues, and are it's the most reason for long time work absence. So you need to make sure that people are promoted as far as promotion of the health levels, brochures, screenings, use their insurance, right? Then you can begin a wellness program, support groups, and health insurance incentives. And then, of course, other things such as having a dedicated gym or facility or constant health related education to help your employees to be healthy and keep healthy. And in order to keep them healthy as well, especially mentally, is uh, answering their questions concerning any workplace violence, letting them know, not brushing it under the rug, but talking about it, what to do during certain situations, how to do it. Make sure that you've got good screening in place for hiring people. And then, of course, making sure you've got the trained personnel to take care of these issues as well. Warning signs are bullying, being discourteous, disrespectful, uncooperative, verbally abusive. Then it escalates arguments, sabotage of stealing or property revenge, written or formal threats as well. And then others such as threats of suicide, physical altercation, destruction of property, extreme rage, and then brandishing weapons to harm others. We've seen this on the news. Okay, now it's hard for an employer, especially if it's one that has a lot of employees, to keep tabs on everybody. So what they need to do is they need to have help. So if you see something, report it. If it's a concern for you, it's a concern for others. And there's many ways that you can do this. There's even now hotlines that you can call HR that are anonymous so that you can give these people tips about what's going on and how it needs to be fixed. In a disaster plan, what are we going to do? And those happen. Who's going to be on call? Who's going to come in? Who's going to stay home? What are we planning? What happens if it gets real bad if there's flooding. All of that has to be in place, and that training has to be in place in order to help employees that are not only impacted by the disaster in their homes, but what if their employer is impacted as well? What are we going to do? And we need to make sure that there is a plan in place and that there is disaster plan training as well. And again, the other thing is planning for disease issues is the evacuation of employees from where flu is, and especially if it's rampant. Make sure that they understand good hand washing. And flu doesn't go away. It doesn't just come in during the fall times. Flu is always around. That's why we need to make sure that we protect ourselves and that we do get immunized and that we have good hand washing techniques. But for safety, it's the employee's responsibility as well as the employer's to maintain a health and happy, reasonably happy work environment. Okay? I'll see you guys on the flip side.